Have you ever quietly wondered if size really matters? Or if that's just a myth men over 50 are pressured to believe? Most men are told bigger is better, yet many still feel anxious, confused, or even ashamed, despite being healthy and attentive partners. The real issue isn't inches, it's misunderstanding what women actually respond to, biologically and emotionally. In today's video, I'll reveal what science truly says about how many inches women actually want, and why most men are focusing on the wrong metric. I'm Dr. Barbara O'Neill, a urologist with over 40 years of experience helping men restore confidence and vitality. Tell me where you're watching from, and if this helps, like and subscribe. When men over 50 come into my office, the question they rarely ask out loud but carry silently is whether they're still enough. Somewhere along the way, many of you were taught that size is the defining factor of masculine worth. That belief didn't come from medicine or biology. It came from locker room talk, adult media, and decades of exaggeration that quietly rewired confidence. Over time, this myth creates stress, performance anxiety, and even sleep problems, which directly affect testosterone, energy, and intimacy. And the tragedy is that most men worrying about this were never the problem to begin with. Biologically speaking, the idea that bigger is always better simply doesn't hold up. Human anatomy, both male and female, was not designed around extremes. Nerve distribution, blood flow, and arousal are influenced far more by relaxation and connection than measurements. When stress hormones like cortisol rise, which happens when you're anxious or self-critical, blood flow decreases. That alone can affect performance more than any physical trait ever could. So when a man is focused on proving himself instead of being present, his own biology works against him. Emotionally, I see the toll this myth takes every single day. Men who are successful, loving partners suddenly feel inadequate because they're comparing themselves to unrealistic standards. This comparison steals confidence, and confidence is deeply tied to attraction and satisfaction. Many men tell me they feel tense before intimacy, worried they'll disappoint. That tension doesn't just live in the mind, it shows up in the body, disrupting arousal, stamina, and even recovery. The myth becomes a self-fulfilling loop that has nothing to do with inches. Here's the practical shift I encourage men over 50 to make immediately. Stop measuring worth and start prioritizing presence. Your nervous system responds to calm, not comparison. Before intimacy, slow your breathing, ground yourself, and focus on connection rather than performance. This simple reset lowers stress hormones and supports healthy testosterone signaling. It also allows you to show up emotionally, which is something many partners value far more than physical attributes. This isn't theory, it's physiology working in your favor. I've watched men transform simply by letting go of this false benchmark. When confidence returns, energy improves. When energy improves, sleep deepens. When sleep improves, hormones stabilize. Suddenly, intimacy feels natural again instead of pressured. The biggest myth men over 50 were taught isn't just wrong, it distracts you from what actually creates satisfaction and closeness. And in the next part, I'm going to show you exactly what female biology truly responds to and why this changes everything you thought you knew. Most men over 50 were never taught what actually matters when it comes to female anatomy. You've probably been led to believe that deeper is better, or that certain positions are more manly because they allow for more reach. But biologically, that's not how female pleasure works. In fact, the majority of female nerve endings involved in sexual response are concentrated in the first 2 inches of the vaginal canal. Let that sink in. It's the closest area to the surface that responds most, not the deepest. Here's where nerve science changes the story. The clitoris has over 8,000 nerve endings, more than any other part of the human body. And most of those nerves are externally located. That means intense satisfaction often has little to do with penetration depth and everything to do with stimulation of that outer region. And if you're feeling skeptical, you're not alone. Many men I speak with are surprised and relieved when they learn this, because it means that intimacy isn't about performance or reaching a certain point. It's about slowing down, focusing on connection, and understanding that pleasure is created through rhythm, touch, and responsiveness, not inches. Now, emotionally, this knowledge can shift your entire experience. When you're no longer trying to achieve something physically unrealistic or unnecessary, your stress lowers. You stop overthinking and your partner picks up on that calm presence. You're more attuned, more patient, more connected. And connection is what women over 50 consistently report as the foundation of satisfying intimacy. Not size, not speed, not stamina, just presence. And that presence starts when you're not worried about measuring up. So here's your practical tip. Instead of focusing on length, focus on tempo. Soft, consistent touch and attentive pacing activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's relaxation system. This is essential for female arousal. If she feels emotionally safe and physically relaxed, her body will respond more naturally. Use your hands, your voice, your breath. Learn to read subtle cues. This approach makes you a more attentive lover, and it works regardless of size, age, or performance history. Once men realize this, they often feel a huge sense of relief, because they were never the problem, they were just misinformed. And when you work with female biology instead of against it, the whole experience becomes less about proving and more about connecting. That's the real key. And the next piece of the puzzle is even more surprising. It has nothing to do with anatomy at all, and everything to do with what women remember most after intimacy ends. Let's talk about what the research actually says, because when it comes to size and satisfaction, most men over 50 are relying on secondhand stories, online myths, or skewed media rather than real data. And that misinformation leads to insecurity that simply isn't backed by science. A comprehensive study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine surveyed thousands of women and found something most men never hear. The majority of women reported that size only matters somewhat or not at all in long-term relationships. In fact, less than 20% of women rated size as a top factor in satisfaction. What mattered far more were emotional closeness, communication, and feeling understood. But you won't hear that in the locker room or in the movies. When it comes to average preferences, the numbers are surprisingly moderate. Multiple global studies, including one conducted by UCLA, found that the average erect length preferred by women ranged from 5 to 6.5 inches, not 8, not 9, and definitely not 10. And here's where it gets interesting. Preferences were often lower in the context of long-term relationships versus casual encounters. Why? Because over time, emotional safety, communication, and consistency become much more important than novelty or physical extremes. Now let's talk about why men misinterpret this data. A lot of online surveys are clickbait. They attract participants with skewed demographics or exaggerate their headlines. And most men who are anxious about their size tend to only seek out information that confirms their fear. That's human nature. We look for validation of our insecurities, not evidence to contradict them. But when you step back and look at the science, the story is completely different. Emotionally, I want you to hear this. If you've ever doubted your worth based on a number, that's not your fault. Our culture promotes the idea that bigger is better, without context, without nuance, and without evidence. And for men over 50, who may already be dealing with hormonal shifts, lower energy, or body changes, that added pressure can deeply affect confidence and intimacy. But once you understand what's actually being measured and what really matters to your partner, you can start to reclaim that confidence. Here's your mindset shift. Satisfaction isn't about measurement, it's about meaning. The couples who report the highest satisfaction are the ones who feel emotionally connected, not physically perfect. That's what the research consistently shows. And when you embrace that, intimacy becomes less about performance and more about presence. But what is it that women remember most, long after the act is over? It's not size, it's something far more powerful. And that's exactly where we're going next. By the time most men reach their 50s or 60s, they've learned to focus on the physical, testosterone levels, energy, stamina. But what often gets missed is one of the most powerful drivers of satisfaction in a relationship: emotional safety. Not just for your partner, but for you as well. The truth is, the most fulfilling intimacy doesn't begin in the bedroom, it begins in the nervous system. When both partners feel safe, seen, and confident, the body naturally responds. And that's where real attraction comes alive. Let's start with testosterone because it plays a central role in how you feel, perform, and connect. Low testosterone doesn't just affect drive, it affects mood, confidence, and emotional stability. If you feel irritable, withdrawn, or hesitant during intimacy, it might not be psychological, it might be hormonal. The good news? When men begin to re-establish emotional connection and reduce stress, testosterone levels can often stabilize naturally. That's because the brain and hormones are deeply linked, especially in men over 50. Now let's talk about confidence. Not the fake kind you see on social media or in movies, but the quiet, grounded confidence that says, I know who I am and I don't need to prove anything. That's the kind of confidence women respond to most. When a man is emotionally present, listening, focused, not rushing or performing, he creates a space of safety, and safety leads to trust. Trust leads to relaxation, and relaxation leads to deeper arousal. It's a chain reaction, and you have more influence over it than you realize. Here's one practical habit I recommend to every man over 50. Start a 5-minute nightly check-in with your partner. No agenda, no devices, just a moment to sit down, look her in the eye, and ask how she's feeling. Not how her day went, how she is. This simple gesture builds trust, boosts oxytocin, and lays the emotional groundwork for a more connected physical relationship. Over time, this habit trains your nervous systems to synchronize. That's when intimacy becomes less about performance and more about presence. And here's the beautiful part. When emotional connection increases, your body starts to respond better too. Blood flow improves, sleep deepens, erections become more consistent. Why? Because you're finally getting out of fight or flight mode and into a space where your hormones, heart and mind are aligned. This is the most overlooked performance advantage, and it's available to every man, no matter his age or size. Now that we've covered the emotional and hormonal piece, let's flip the narrative completely. Because in the next chapter, I'm going to show you why men over 50 actually have a hidden advantage in the bedroom and how to use it starting tonight. Here's the truth no one tells you. Men over 50 actually have a biological and emotional edge when it comes to intimacy, but most never realize it. Why? Because the mainstream conversation is stuck on youth, stamina, and performance. But what women truly crave in long-term connection isn't tied to how long you last. It's how deeply you connect. And this is where men in their 50s, 60s and beyond begin to shine. By this stage of life you've lived, you've experienced relationships, learned patience, weathered stress, and hopefully gained a deeper understanding of yourself. That emotional maturity is a huge advantage. Women over 50 consistently report that what draws them in is a man who is present, grounded, and emotionally safe. That's something younger men often lack because they're still proving something. But you're in a stage where wisdom and calm confidence can replace pressure and insecurity. Now here's where biology supports you. As testosterone levels stabilize or slightly decline, your nervous system naturally shifts out of the impulsive, high-pressure drive of your 20s and into a more balanced, 30s attuned rhythm. That means less focus on rushing and more on reading your partner. That's when connection deepens. This slower, more responsive rhythm allows for greater satisfaction for both partners. And yes, you can still maintain strong energy, strong erections and desire, but without the frantic, one-note intensity that can often sabotage true intimacy. Here's how to use this advantage tonight. Shift from doing to noticing. During intimacy, slow down and observe her breathing, her pace, her energy. Match it. Let her cues guide your rhythm, not the pressure to perform. This practice, called co-regulation, strengthens emotional and physical connection. When you match her nervous system, you create safety, and safety unlocks arousal, trust, and deeper pleasure. This is your edge. It's not about being younger, it's about being attuned. And when you combine that with what we've covered, clear anatomy understanding, emotional presence, trust-building habits, you begin to realize that satisfaction was never about size or age. It was always about awareness, responsiveness, and connection. You already have everything you need. So if you've been doubting yourself, measuring your worth by outdated standards, I want you to remember this. Your best years are not behind you. They're right here in this chapter of life, where confidence, clarity, and true connection live. Now let's pull all of this together, because what we've just covered can completely transform how you view your health, your hormones, and your intimate relationships. And in the closing message, I'll remind you exactly how to reclaim the energy, confidence, and peace of mind you deserve. Before we close, I want you to remember this. Your worth as a man has never been measured in inches. It's measured in how present you are, how healthy you feel, how confident you show up, and most of all, how emotionally safe someone feels with you. That's what creates real connection. When you take time to understand your body, manage stress, sleep better, and support your natural testosterone levels, you unlock a kind of intimacy that doesn't fade with age, it deepens. Stop comparing yourself to myths. They were never true. Instead, start living from a place of clarity and strength, backed by science, not shame. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, share your experience, and let's support each other in this chapter of life. You're not alone here. Your best years aren't behind you. They're built by what you choose to do next, and that starts today.